Zhou-san, ni hao, and good morning from Lei Yue Mun here in Hong Kong. This is the start of a new series that we're calling The Battle for Hong Kong. Let's go. Now, if I was to say to you, when did World War II start? You'd probably say 1939. If you're American, you might even say 1941. But here in China, people say 1931. That's when the Japanese first invaded Manchuria in the north. And then in 1937, after the Marco Polo Bridge incident, the conflict got a lot worse. And then by 1938, they'd come, swept right down here, and the Japanese had taken Guangzhou and were right here on the Hong Kong border. In today's episode, we're going to cross Hong Kong Harbour at the narrowest point on this nice little chugger boat here and head up to the Hong Kong Coastal Defence Museum right up there on the hill. Let's go. Following the bombing of Pearl Harbor on the 7th of December, on the 8th of December, Hong Kong was bombed by the Japanese, and Japanese troops flooded over the border. Within 8 to 10 days, they were here on the Kowloon side of Hong Kong, overlooking Hong Kong Island, which was heavily defended by British, Canadian, Chinese, and Punjabi troops. This being the narrowest point between Hong Kong Island and Kowloon side, the Japanese, on the morning of the 18th of December, brought 6 battalions over and attacked the Lei Yue Mun Redoubt up on the hill. Made it onto Hong Kong side, and we're going to walk along to the Coastal Defence Museum, even though it's about a kilometre, so not too far, but it is hot and humid here. It is typhoon season, so right here you can see the Shao Kei Wan typhoon shelter. We've got a few of these dotted around Hong Kong. Essential this time of year when the typhoons come through. The local fishermen park their boats in here to keep them safe. Although Hong Kong is a very deep water port and is fairly safe anyway, but they do need these extra typhoon shelters. Let's walk along the waterfront and see what else we can find on the way to the museum. And there we go, the rain has started. June in Hong Kong, not the best time to come because of the rain, because of the heat, but still come if you're planning a trip to Asia. Right, now I've just found out this was also called Aldrich Bay here, named after Colonel Edward Aldrich, who was a Royal Engineer who arrived after the British took Hong Kong in about 1843, 1844, and he took ships up and down the Pearl River and blew up many of the Chinese forts in Whampoa all the way up to the city of Canton. So it used to be called Aldrich Bay, now it is the Shao Kei Wan Typhoon Shelter. Got some really cool little sampan boats here. These almost look like people live on them, but back in the day, back in the 1800s, when the British first arrived here, the tanker people lived on their boats all around Hong Kong, particularly on the south of Hong Kong Island. But there's a few sampans that look very well worn, well looked after at the same time. Right, I can see, as the rain pours down, got a little temple over here, so let's head in for some welcome rest. Right outside the main entrance here, we've got a memorial to Joseph Hughes. He was a Scotsman who died in 1946. He was driving with a lorry loaded full of ammunition when it caught fire, and instead of leaving the burning truck, he stayed with it, tried to extinguish it, and now we've got this memorial to him. This happened on March 21st, 1946, so after the Battle for Hong Kong. He was posthumously awarded the George Cross. You can take a lift all the way up inside the hill to the top here where the redoubt is, but it is persisting down with rain out there. Right across on the opposite hill we've got the old Lei Yue Mun barracks, but for now we'll wait it out inside here. Let's take a little look at a map to see what we can see on this trip around the Coastal Museum. We're up here on the top where there is a fortified mound and a redoubt. We've got some batteries, some field guns, anti-aircraft guns, and then we'll make our way down the steps and finish off here at the West Battery and take a look at the torpedo installations. Now, can you believe 7 years in Hong Kong, I've never been here, so this is new for me. So join me as we head out into the rain and find out more about the Hong Kong Coastal Museum. As you walk around the Coastal Defence Museum here, you see lots of these statues of different troops popping up from everywhere. It's really cool to see. Now you're thinking, what is a redoubt? Now, I hadn't actually heard that word until I came to Hong Kong. I don't think we tend to use it much in Britain. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'd never come across it until here in Hong Kong, when we have quite a few redoubts here. This is the redoubt here at Lei Yue Mun. It is a fortification sort of built into the hillside, sort of underground. It's not a main fort by any means. We also have a very famous one up at Shing Mun, which was built just before World War II. And we'll go there on another episode, but let's take a look inside the Lei Yue Mun redoubt. This redoubt was built in the 1880s, and we see here to get into the redoubt we've got a bit of a drawbridge here. So this used to be a wooden drawbridge, now metal, but this would have been another safety feature here to protect the people inside the redoubt. First little tunnel that you go into tells you all about the history of this part of Hong Kong Island. Some very old maps going back to the 1500s, and then pretty much zipping straight ahead to when the British arrived in 1841. It's a cool little picture here, a painting of the British cantonments at the foot of Sai Wan Hill. This picture here, we've got Lieutenant General Hugh Gough, who gave his name to one of the batteries on the other side of the peninsula from here, and Henry Pottinger, the first governor of Hong Kong. I love this map here by the War Office in 1895. Now, in 1895, British had taken Hong Kong Island and this little bit of the southern Kowloon Peninsula here. But around here, this was still China. But in 1898, with the Convention of Peking, Britain leased this land all the way up to the Chinese border now, where it's at in Shenzhen, for 99 years. But here you can really closely see how close, how small the gap is between the Kowloon side and the Hong Kong Island side. So by putting batteries on both sides, you could easily defend the entrance to this magnificent Hong Kong harbour. Just found this cool little graphic in one of the rooms here. If I turn you around, you can see this is the basically the evolution of the batteries here in Hong Kong. So in 1840, just before the British arrived, or in the 1840s, we can see we've got 3 batteries. By 1850, we've got a few more again along just in the city of Victoria. By 1880s, both sides of the harbour are now littered with the batteries. By 1900, even more. We can see how many are around where we are today at the Coastal Defence Museum, either side of the entrance to the harbour. Even more so in 1910, and then by 1941, we've got some appearing at the south side of Hong Kong Island. Some disappearing, but still the ones here entering the harbour are there. Right, let's carry on our tour around the Redoubt. This little room in here, it's a bit of a tribute to all the different types of ethnicities that fought in the British Army. In 1997, when the British left Hong Kong, it was the PLA who came in, People's Republic of China troops, who took over from the British Army. And there's a nice little display here inside the Defence Museum, all about the rights and responsibilities of the PLA Army to protect and defend Hong Kong now in 2024. In one of the side passages here, we have Captain Alexander Moncrief, who designed the battery, changed the way it looked in order for safer protection from firing into the battery itself. As we head up to the battery, unfortunately we can't open the doors, but you can see that the soldiers will be very well protected on all sides just from above. They're not protected, so these batteries were quite safe. But on the morning of the 18th of December and a few days before, these batteries were hit, so they were inoperable on the morning that the Japanese came over here onto Hong Kong Island. Really impressed with all the rooms here within the fort. Tell you the narrative of the battle for Hong Kong from the start right through to the end. You've got anti-Japanese guerrillas behind enemy lines, things. You've got resisting Japanese invasion. You've got the volunteer force. You've got lots of different things. So definitely get yourself down here, and it's free. And there's a cafeteria overlooking the harbour. So well worth a visit. Right, let's head outside and head down towards the torpedo shelter. Let's go.
It's moving, lads. We can come all day. Sir, yes,
I guess this is why they called it the Redoubt, because you can see it's all under underground here on top of the hill, nice and safe here, although we do know it was bombed and people were killed when the Japanese attacked on the morning of the 18th of December. Look at this weather now, it's balmy. Need a hat and sunglasses now. Right, well, right across that's Lei Yue Mun barracks. There's also a battery over there. So when this was the first part to be taken on Hong Kong Island on the morning of the 18th. Very, very soon after, the Japanese troops attacked the barracks there and started making their way around to the north side of Hong Kong Island. And it only took them 7 days from this point. It was December 25th, 1941, when the British surrendered finally here in Hong Kong, handing Hong Kong over to the Japanese. Nice little art installation here of a Chinese member of the volunteer force here in Hong Kong. We called it the Home Guard back in Britain, but it was the volunteer force over here. Chinese, British, lots of different nationalities actually volunteered for the volunteer force when the Japanese were on the border and ready to attack. People signed up, many gave their lives for Hong Kong. So we can see here the entrance to the eastern part of the harbour, the narrowest part between Kowloon side and Hong Kong Island. And up there on the hill, you should be able to see Devil's Peak Battery and Pottinger Battery, two different batteries at different levels that also protected the entrance to here. On the 18th and just before of December 1841, the batteries were blown up by bombs dropped by the Japanese here. Now this interesting rotund building here was the proof yard. It looks a bit like a kiln you might see in Stoke-on-Trent. Although there were kilns here all over Hong Kong going back thousands of years. Now the proof yard is where stocks of explosives were actually inspected before they went up into the Redoubt. This one was erected just before World War II in 1940-1941. Now, often forgotten troops here in Hong Kong were those of the Canadian Army, the Winnipeg Grenadiers and the Royal Rifles of Canada arrived here just before the Japanese invaded. They had about 2 months to enjoy Hong Kong before they were engaging in fighting with the Japanese, and many Canadian soldiers lost their lives here fighting for the British Empire in Hong Kong. Well, unfortunately, rain has stopped play here in Hong Kong. There is a thunderstorm warning out from the Hong Kong Observatory, which means we can no longer go down the path to the torpedo shelters and see the things down there. But that means we'll come back someday to find out all about them and the history behind the torpedo shelters, because I know there's more torpedo caves and things like that around Hong Kong. So that brings it to a close today. Hope you've enjoyed looking around the Hong Kong Coastal Defence Museum. Do get yourself down here, it's free, and there's tons and tons of things to do for adults and children alike. Just remains for me to say, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.